Back to Inspiring Talks with Ilham. I'm your host Ilham, and joining us today is Franklin Pieterse. He's a transformation specialist with over 25 years of experience in industries like telecoms, FMCG, and tech. And as CEO of Terbigen, am I saying that right, Franklin? Terbigen.
That's correct. Yes. Well said.
He helps businesses navigate change and drive growth. Franklin's expertise spans businesses, re-engineering, financial strategy, and tech integration. It's like what Johan says, if we have to talk about your CV, then it'll really take up the whole show. But you've just welcome to Inspire Else's Radio again. And how have you been?
Been very well. Thank you. Looking forward to the session. Thanks for having
Um,
me.
so if you can just give our listeners some background information and how did you get into entrepreneurship and business rescue?
Yes. So thanks. I've got a long career, obviously been around the block a few times. So my story is really, I started out many years ago as in telecom in my early years. So the first 18 years of my career was in telecom on the technical side and then kind of worked my way through. But a lot of what I did then formed by me being an activist. So in the 80s and 90s, obviously we all were fighting apartheid. Well, not everybody, but some of us were. And I used to be an activist outside of my work, and at work I would be quiet until one day a certain event inspired me to look at worker issues, and I became a trade unionist. Then she became a president of one of the unions, and found myself in negotiation with senior management when I was just a young technical officer of sorts. But that mindset of always looking to make a change and a difference is what really guides my path and my journey. That I find it difficult just to get into a situation and just go with the flow unless the flow is a good flow, you know. I find that I tend to challenge the status quo. So eventually, even after a long career and from telecom, I moved into many senior roles outside of telecom. And if you have time, we can talk about those.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, my last corporate role was CEO of a waste management company. And after I left that business, I tried to do a management buyout, which didn't quite happen because we couldn't find an agreement with the shareholders. When I left the business, the transaction advisor at the time was PwC, and they gave me a call and said, Franklin, we have a enterprise development program. Don't you want to come help? And that's when my coaching and consulting business started, which effectively was my own business now as an entrepreneur. And then from there, I've always, because I've had a broad and varied exposure to many industries, as you've read in the opening remarks. I have a knack of finding, or let me rather say, attracting opportunities in a sense that there's lots of problems to solve. And I guess I'm motivated by wanting to create change. And it's only later on in my career that I've really started to appreciate, the essence of entrepreneurship, what it means to be successful as an entrepreneur. And at the end of the day, it's all about creating value, value for your market, for your customers, etc. And so yeah, so the desire to drive for change is really the desire that attracted me into entrepreneurship.
Mm. So you've been in. Okay, let's start yeah, we're at the beginning. So what is the most challenging part of starting your business, Terbigen?
Yeah. So the most challenging part for my business is probably, as in any business, and particularly consulting, advisory, coaching type businesses. It's really about building a customer base. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people, and I mean, I might as well start with a lot of people out there are thinking maybe I should become a consultant. Okay. The biggest challenge of consultant is firstly you're selling time, and a lot of your hours are not sold, right? So it means that you have a lot of downtime, in other words, dead time that you're not able to bill for, to invoice for. And that's very important to understand that if you're a consultant, you must have the majority of your time billable, meaning that you are serving a customer assignment, customer project, or client engagement that pays you. So that's the biggest challenge. So for me, when Terbigen started, it was actually not as hard because I had the fortune of PwC, sending clients to me, which is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing in the sense that I didn't do enough to build a client base outside of that. But anyway, so when starting a consulting business, the biggest challenge is signing up clients. The problem, though, is that a lot of consultants or people who started as consultants think that because they're clever, they're smart, they've got experience, that the world is, come and knock on their doors. In reality, that just doesn't happen. So there's a lot of work that you need to do to profile yourself and your skill. Part of the reason I've agreed to be here is it doesn't help me having knowledge and skill and nobody knows about it, right? So you've got to invest in building your profile, which simply means telling the world who you are and what you're about and the value that you create. And that's important for a consulting business. I'm happy to talk about other businesses, but we'll get to that later.
Hmm. So you're saying that, right? I understand what you're saying when you're saying you need to put yourself out there. It's kind of like self-promotion. But would you also
Yes.
say when you started your business compared to the world now, it's a completely different world.
Mm,
So like how would you say
exactly
if
right.
you were starting Terbigen now, what would you do
Mm.
now?
Yeah, I think the one thing that's not different is that you need to be known by the right people who would
Mm,
be able to make use of your services. The other thing is I also must emphasize the point. It's not just about people who need your services, but those who can afford your services. Okay.
mm,
Especially for consultants and coaches who kind of have a price tag that a lot of entrepreneurs can't actually afford or startups can't afford. So it doesn't help you've got a lot of interest from people who can't afford your services because then it's as good as still having no clients. In fact, it's better
mm,
to not have clients than to have clients who can't afford you. So a big part of consulting is really about telling your story, right? Let the world know your story. And the story is less about who you are, but more about the value you bring to the world. And so recently, probably in the last 3 to 4 years, I've achieved a certification called a Certified Reinvention Practitioner. So that now again gives a unique spin, unique focus on what I do. At the same time, I also want to share with the viewers and the listeners that um, I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur in the sense that I run a number of businesses, right? So I'm also have a company or I'm a shareholder in a company that I'm leading that does telecoms projects. And that company is all about delivering infrastructure related projects where we deal with suppliers, you deal with, again, you need to have a customer, you need to have a contract, or at least one, and then start building out from there. Then I have another business in the energy space, the solar energy space, which is also related. Um, and I'm able to play between those three spaces, among other things. During my time with PwC, I was exposed to a whole range of businesses from fashion designers to beauty industries, all the way down to manufacturers. Um, at some point, I was very involved with a security technology company, helping them to turn around to understand the world better. And so the value of me being a consultant and a coach is that I bring a different perspective, meaning I look at the business differently than what the owner has been looking. A lot of the time, the owners are very treasured. It's hard to run a business because the most important thing is cash flow in most cases, people will tell you. But to be able to, at the end of the month, have the money to pay your staff if you employ people, or to pay yourself even if you work by yourself. That's the biggest challenge. And obviously, what gets you to cash flow is to sell profitable services or products, right? Um, so coming back to what makes businesses successful is absolutely having what I call product market fit. And it's a simple, sounds complicated, but it simply means being able or having proven that the product that you're selling, the market wants it, or the service you're selling, the market wants it. How do you know the market wants it? Because they coming to you, they're prepared to pay you for what you deliver, and in what they're paying you, there's a margin. Okay. Um, like for example, I like to talk about basic businesses. Let's say garden services, if you, for example, if you decide, okay, I'm unemployed, I have a lawnmower, I have a weed eater, I can get a few guys together, we can go around and cut people grass and make their gardens nice. Okay, good idea. A lot of opportunity out there because there's a lot of places with gardens, some small, some bigger. But obviously, you then need to go to areas where people value their gardens and they want the gardens to look neat and clean. And for them, it's a pain to try and do it themselves. So you can do it and save them the time, effort, and they pay you for it. But what you want to make sure is that you don't just think about getting invoicing and paying yourself or paying your guys that you work with. You want to make sure there's a healthy margin. What simply means after you've invoiced the amount that you're getting paid, you cover all your costs, including if you need to get a bakkie, how you pay for the bakkie, the fuel for the bakkie, the tools, making sure all your tools are in tip-top condition, um, and you've paid your staff, and you can pay yourself a salary or you can pay yourself, call it profits. Okay, it's a bit more complicated, but that so that you understand that it's not just about selling and getting paid, but making sure that there's margin. But at the same time, and I don't want to go too far ahead, but when I'm touching on points, I realize I might be creating confusion, so allow me to unpack. So a lot of people struggle to find the right price for what they're selling. Okay, so pricing is a very important skill and technique to have because price is, a lot of people do cost plus pricing. In other words, if let's say I decided to make chairs, right? And I know it's going to cost me, the material for the chairs is going to cost me maybe 200 Rand. So now I think I can sell the chair for 200 Rand plus 20%. Okay. And often what happens is that the individuals making the chair forgotten that they need to factor in the time they spent in making the chair. They forgot to factor in the time they spent in designing the chair. Okay. The time they spent in sourcing the materials. So all those things add up. So you can't just do your cost plus. You've got to recognize what a healthy margin. The healthy margin means that there's enough in it to cover me off and for me to sustain myself. Having said that, I now need to say the opposite. The opposite means that the price of that chair has nothing to do with your cost. It has everything to do with the price that people are prepared to pay for such a chair if they buy it from wherever else. Okay? So price is a factor of the market. In other words, what are chairs that you make sell for in other places? And how do you then come? So in other words, so what you want to do is to make sure that the price is based on the market. And then if you price it against the market, and it means you can decide to be equal to what the other guy that makes chairs, you can decide to sell it more expensive because you create the impression of premium product. You give the consumer a reason to believe they need to pay more, and you can tell the consumer, oh, you put in more effort, more creativity, or you can try to go for volume and sell it cheaper than the market, in which case you're trying to commoditize and sell as many chairs as possible with minimal margin. But because you're going to sell more chairs than a premium guy, you still make the same or even more profit than the guy who sells premium. So those are the decisions that you have to make when you do pricing although pricing is a different conversation and it was not what I was planning to talk about, but I just came up as we had a conversation. Let me pause there and let me deal with your questions rather.
Yeah, because you already kind of answered my next question, like how do you make sure what advice do you have that makes people successful? And you kind of answered that, but you need to do the research on your market, on
Yes,
where the business that you are going into. You need to also check
yes,
out your competition, and so you need to do
exactly.
that research so that you can ensure that in that market you are successful. But
Absolutely.
that is one aspect of being a successful business. What do very, very successful people understand that like a lay person wouldn't, like a normal person doesn't know?
Yes,
And like, what can you tell them to get like either if maybe they stuck at a certain level
yes,
and they and like you said earlier, that you come in and then normally you give fresh eyes on a situation, and
yes,
maybe you see things that the business owner doesn't see, because if you're stuck in a rut, sometimes you feel the pressure. So like,
yeah.
what do successful people understand that we can learn?
Yeah, so there's a few points I want to touch on now.
Yes, Franklin.
The first thing that I want to say is that um, successful people listen more than what they speak. Let me start there. Okay. If you go to the world of sport, okay, and you think of any top athlete, then the moment you've paid attention to the athlete, you will see behind the athlete there's a coach. So unfortunately, in business, there's not enough people who want to be successful or recognize the value and power of a coach. Okay? And I'm not saying this to sell coaching, but I'm saying this so that we understand that we always have a limited perspective as individuals. And again, I want to speak to that business owner who's just struggling through. Okay. It's hard, it's tough, but they tough it out and they keep going and keep going and keep trying and keep trying. Nothing wrong with it. But I'm going to encourage you to bring a fresh pair of eyes. Okay. Somebody who can sit next to you and say and ask you the questions. Okay. Tell me what you're doing, how's it going, what are your pain points, etc. And then able to help you look at things through a series of questions and answers that would eventually reveal that stuck points.
Mm,
You made the point about being stuck. People are mostly stuck because they often because they're stubborn. And there's almost a thin line between wanting to prove the world that I was right and I am right and I will be right. And on the other hand, if you stop believing, it's like you admit to failure. Okay? Being honest in your reflection and acknowledging that at times, yes, we fail. Like I've failed multiple times, right? The key to dealing with failure, first thing is to acknowledge the thing is not working. Okay. And if it's not working, it's not because there's something wrong with you. It could just be that you've lost the fit that you have with the market, if ever
mm,
you had. If ever you had customers and means you no longer have customers. Or it could mean that you still have customers, you're very busy, but you don't have money left to put in your pocket at the end of the month. Okay.
mm,
You're always exhausted. And so in those scenarios, you've got to understand if there's a problem with your pricing, your business model, your costing, how are you going about? So you really need to drill down to understand what is the source or the origin of the failure. Okay. So first is acknowledging if there's failure and stuckness, or acknowledging that you're not moving ahead. So it's different for the entrepreneur who's never really had success, but to keep trying and to keep believing and keep praying and keep hoping. Okay. So even to that entrepreneur, I would say, get a fresh pair of eyes in. It doesn't have to be me, it doesn't have to be somebody that I'm promoting or I know. Just get somebody who can, even if it's your friend, but preferably not your friend because they might not want to hurt your feelings. Okay. It's not about feelings, it's really about understanding what it takes to make your type of business work. And I want to go back to the points you've made about market research and about understanding competition. Research doesn't mean one single thing. It just simply means paying attention to what is the alternative to you that your customer has.
mm,
Let's say you're selling Tupperware as a simple example, and there's many people who sell Tupperware. Okay. What are they getting from somebody else, and why should they buy from you? You need to create that differentiating advantage, whatever makes you different. And it could be that you're the only Tupperware person who's prepared to come to somebody's house. Okay. Or it could be that you're the only Tupperware person with a range of colors, whatever it is. And whatever that differentiator is, make sure that it is what the customer wants, not what you're pushing, right?
mm,
So research simply means sometimes you can just sit and watch. What are your competitors doing? What are the others doing? And your competitors are not your enemies. Okay. Many of them are hustling themselves. Sometimes, if you go talk to your competitor, you guys can combine forces and offer a bigger, better service that you can charge twice or three times for. So it's really about being open-minded to learn and to not get too caught up with your own clever ideas. Your clever ideas are important. Trust them, trust your gut, but allow market feedback to, to teach you what works and what doesn't work. Okay. Be curious. Always be open-minded. Always pay attention to what customers are saying. If customers are not saying anything, ask them, why are you buying from me? What do you like about what I do and what can I do better? Okay. That's the most important information, even more important than a consultant or a coach or an advisor or a mentor is what the customers are saying. Secondly, for a lot of businesses nowadays, it's about knowing who those customers are. What is the gap you're filling for your customers? Whether you're selling, as I said, garden services or shoes or whatever, pay attention to your customers and their behavior, their cycles, their interests. The closer you are aligned to what customers really want and why they would buy from one person or another or one business to another, the
mhm,
better chance you have of breaking through and being successful. And as I said, keep it simple. But I also want to say one thing, and I must come back to your main question about successful people. At a base level, and the reason that I'm on this show with you is to really encourage people to to dive into business. Okay, dive in and start with what you have. Very important. I know too many entrepreneurs, they've got great ideas, or people who would be entrepreneurs. They say that if only this happens, then I'm going to start. Okay. Don't wait for that big event to happen. Look at what you have now that you can do something with. Always start with what you have. Pay attention to the gap in the market. Offer your products and services. Don't wait for some miracle to happen. Yes, start with friends and family, but you can't build a business on friends and family. Okay? You've got to build a business based on the value that you bring. And whether it's from garden services to selling Tupperware to selling shoes or to fixing cell phones, you've really got to pay attention to what's important to your customers. So coming back to the difference between very successful people and the average person, yes, there's a chunk of it that's about um, how successful people grow themselves all the time. Okay, how they pay attention to their thoughts, to their feelings, because our thoughts and our feelings shape our outcomes. Okay, in other words, they don't allow themselves to get into a negative spiral. You know, people who are the difference between successful and unsuccessful. Unsuccessful people say, ah, no, those guys are lucky. I'm never lucky. Okay. Create your own luck by believing in yourself and believing in what you're doing. Secondly, pay attention, as I said, to the market, to your customers. Who's buying, why they're buying, when they're buying, how they're buying, and be there where you need to be so that you can sell. Okay. So these are some of the basic things. And then obviously stay hungry to learn. And we can get to new technologies and what that does. But I think for now, it's just about those basics. If you're thinking about starting a business, don't wait for tomorrow. Start now. Okay. Because your biggest challenge is your own, what we call inner critique. Okay. You have that voice in your ear that says, ah, you will never be successful. Ah, I'm only from Elsie's. Nobody's going to take me serious because I'm here. Nobody's going to look at me, I don't look as good as those. I don't sound as good as those. Those are all negative self-talk, negative self conversations that will never, never help you. Pay attention to it and tell yourself that's not true. I am special. I am smart. I'm open to learn and I can. If you say I can, it's true. If you say I can't, it's also true. And the more times you say I can't, the more you draw yourself back and you're not moving forward. So stay in that positive mindset. And if you doubt yourself, speak to somebody who actually believe in you
Hmm.
or can see through all that negative self-talk.
So, Franklin, you're actually saying it's really because we were discussing this. It is a mindset. It's a
Absolutely.
mindset of um, determination. It's a mindset
Yeah.
of you were saying earlier, being hungry for something better, being hungry to
Mhm.
learn. Um,
Mhm.
so, how do we, before we get into the leadership and strategy, how do we? Because it's very easy to say, "Oh, don't think like that," but are there things that you can advise people if their mindset is negative? Is there like
Mhm.
tools that you can give them that they can change from a negative mindset to a positive one and into the one where they can become successful?
Yeah, that's a very important question. Thanks, Ilan. Um, the most important thing is to first start with acknowledging, okay? Listen to yourself, pay attention to what you're thinking, pay attention to what you're saying, pay attention to how you come across, okay?
Mm.
If you are the one who's always complaining, you're complaining about every little thing, or even if you are, and it's often nice people and good people, they're good to everybody but themselves. Okay. So the key is to catch yourself in the moment, to always stay present. I find that people who have, you either um, if you live in the past, in other words, you still think about what happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or when you were a child and you were abused. I'm not denying what happened to you, but that tends to a state of depression of sorts. Okay? Because you play over that movie in your head all the time of the negative things that happened to you. And you kind of then blame that or give that as a reason why you're struggling now. Okay? Then the other one who lives in the future, who says, "Oh, I've got a rent coming up and I don't know, I don't have the money for the rent, or I don't know how I'm going to do this," or we see the kids growing up and they're already depressed because they're worried. And so in that case, you have anxiety that builds up. Okay. So you live in the future, but you're not there yet. Okay. So the first thing is to then appreciate the presence. Stay in the present in the here now. In the here now, you're able to breathe, you can see the sun, you're able to get to where you need to get to. You actually had food today, and you probably have food for tomorrow. And so in the present, you're okay. And so it's about celebrating the present first, okay? And recognizing that you can take charge of your future. And so not to live in the future, but to take charge of what you want your future to look like. What do you have going for yourself that's going to get you there, right? Yes, if it's hard for you because you've tried this, you've tried that, you've tried that, okay? Yeah, spend time on understanding what happened when you tried this and you tried that, okay? And 9 out of 10 times you're going to tell me, no, this guy said he's going to come and he said he's going to give me a job and he never came. Or he wanted to pay me too little, or he didn't have money. And so now you've given up on tomorrow because of what happened in the past. Okay. You've got to accept the past is in the past. You can't live there. Okay. Living there doesn't help you, doesn't serve you, it doesn't serve your progress. Stay in the present. Stay in the present with gratitude, meaning be grateful, be thankful to your creator, to yourself for where you are at. Okay. Be clear about what you want. And if you're not clear about what you want, put everything down. Write it down on a piece of paper. If you have a whiteboard, write it down, everything, and go through a process of elimination on what is the one most important thing that you want to focus in. And that one most important thing is not necessarily the one thing that's going to make you the most money, but two things. The one that's going to make the biggest impact, while at the same time, you the most ready for. So we talk about in the reinvention world about impact readiness. Okay. So the process we follow, put everything down on the board
Mm-hmm.
that you want to do or on a piece of paper. On the far right, you put the things that's going to make the biggest impact. And on the far left, yes, you can do it, but you won't make much of a difference. Okay. And then after you've done that, you spread it from left to right. You then only you say, okay, then you do the readiness part. So it's impact is horizontal, readiness, impact is horizontal, readiness is vertical. Then you look at from left to right, what are you most ready for? Those things that's in the top right-hand corner or the closest to being ready, that's going to make some impact, focus in on that. Okay? So that yes, you may want to be an astronaut, but you're not ready for being an astronaut, but you can start a car wash service as an example. Okay? Just find the right spot, do what you need to do, etc., and make sure you pay attention to who, what, where, and how you're going to serve people. Okay. So once you're ready to serve with products and services, it changes the mindset. The money will come. If you serve, if you serve customers, if you serve your clients with everything you've got, you will be appreciated. And they will come back for more. And make sure you serve them at a fair price, market related fair price.
Mm,
I'll
mm, mm.
pause there and I hope that helped.
That does help. Yes. Thank you so much, Franklin Peterson. We come into the last 6 minutes of the show, and we have so much more that I really want to speak
Oh,
about.
so sorry.
But yeah, time is limited. When it comes to entrepreneurship, because what I really want to do is spark somebody's potential and
Mm,
for them to think, okay, let me contact Franklin or let me contact Inspire Else's Radio. How can I get started? What do I need? What can I do? So,
mm.
what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs? And then also, like, what misconceptions are there that you can address now so that somebody doesn't get disappointed if things don't work out?
Yeah. So entrepreneurship is hard. Okay, let me make that point, all right? But
Mm,
it's doable, it's possible. So failure is part of success.
mm,
If you haven't failed, you will never be successful. So if you can approach it with a humility that says, even though I'm smart, even though what I do is perfect. Like I always talk about, people who've been retrenched, and let me take that example because it's real. And let's say you've been retrenched and you were, you can give me an example, but any kind of job. Let's say you were retrenched from a building company, but you were an expert painter. Okay, you know you're a good painter, but you don't know how to sell. You don't know how to get to those big houses or the big businesses to paint. So if you don't know, you can read things up, you can study up. Okay. And because we only have a few minutes left, I want to make the point from the word go. In 2026, knowledge can never be a problem because we live in a world of AI. Okay. If you have a phone, you can access ChatGPT, or my favorite AI is DeepSeek. I've said it before, and I love DeepSeek because it's free. It's not cheap, it's free. Okay, and DeepSeek is very smart. Ask DeepSeek or ask your AI, how do I get to customers? Okay, but also ask it to ask you about you before you ask for advice so that it is informed about your situation. And so go have a conversation with the AI. And it will help you then with those blind spots you have, okay? From managing money, managing customers, setting up a business, etc. But as I said earlier, if you have the thought, start with it. Okay. Make the commitment to yourself. There's a very big difference between intention and commitment. Okay. Make the commitment to yourself and start. Start with the research. And if you have a phone, you have some data on the phone, use the AI. I'm also going to encourage, Elsie's Radio, that if we need to do a live session or physical session where people can ask questions, we can set that up. And then we can even do examples where
Mhm.
somebody in the room may say, okay, I know how to do needlework. I want to start, making tracksuits. What must I do? And then we can go through that process. So whatever the business is, it's always important to understand who do you want to serve?
Mm.
Okay. And by that I mean who's going to be your customer. But we always think of our customers and our clients as people we serve. Okay. And if you show up with a service mindset, meaning that if they're done with you, they're in a better place than before they were with you. Whether you're making those tracksuits, whether you're buying shoes and selling shoes, whatever it is, it's about focusing on people, solving people problems, because people will pay you if you solve their problems. And so that's a very most important thing. But start if you're ready to start. Um, I've decided that I'm wanting to work with Elsis Radio largely as some of you may know, I was born in Elsis River, but I haven't been in Elsis River for the last 55 years or something. But I'm happy to to be engaged and involved and to support people who genuinely serious about themselves. And maybe make that point that serve yourself first. Okay. Because I know, especially in underserviced communities, the deprived communities, we always want to keep everybody else happy but ourselves. So make sure that you take care of yourself first, your own needs first, and then you can take care of family, friends, and the community.
Mm. I think that's a slogan on its own, Franklin. People will pay you to solve their problems. And if you can
Yes,
understand that mindset and you can solve people's problems in your area, you can make money.
yes,
Like that is
yes,
such wise words, Franklin. People will pay you to solve their problems. Thank you so much for
yes.
coming. It's the last minute of the show. But how can people contact you, Franklin?
Yeah, so obviously via you, they're welcome to contact the radio and you can put them in touch with me. My mobile number, which you can get me on WhatsApp, 083-454-6374. You can go to my website, which is Terbigen, which is TERBIGEN.com. Okay,
Oh, cool.
terbigen.com. If you go onto the website, you'll see everything about my business. You can even from there leave a request for a free consultation because my first session is always free so that we can see whether we understand each other, if I can help you, and you see whether you can work with me. But I always want to make sure that I'm accessible and available. And if you can